Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is concert organist Adam Brakel, hailed as one of the most talented organists in the world by the Chicago Tribune. Welcome, Adam. Adam, describe an organ. Behind you are the pipes of it, but what actually is an organ?
Sure. An organ is an instrument that is really part of the wind family. Everyone sort of compares it, or many people tend to compare it to a piano, but it really is a wind instrument that you play by means of keys. And so I always explain to people that the organ is actually more similar to a flute and a clarinet, an oboe, and many of those instruments as opposed to a piano, even though the organ has 63 generally, or sometimes 61, or a variety of different keys. It really is a wind instrument that is played by the fingers and the feet, and so it allows the pipes to open up pallets to let air breathe through the pipes that are like behind me in the wonderful Royal Ponciana Chapel here in Palm Beach where I work. And so the organ is really that, and utilizing wind to carry the sound of the human voice, whereas a piano is utilized as a percussion instrument.
Yes. And what is its history? How did it come into being?
Yeah, I mean, it started off really as an instrument. It's one of the longest serving instruments that we have, certainly next to the voice. It started off with the Greek hydraulis, which was sort of this instrument, I believe, that was more or less played by water. And then it sort of moved through the centuries. And then, of course, when electricity came to play, we were able to have blowers installed, which allowed for no assistant. Prior, in the days of like Johann Sebastian Bach in the 1600s and 1700s, the organ had to be manually pumped to get the sound to speak as well as play through the pipes. And so the instrument certainly has a history. And again, I always utilize it and sort of try to explain it to people that it really is representing the human voice, and that's what we go for as a performer. And so you want, I think, playing to sound as lyrical as possible to represent and to replicate a wonderful singer. And so it comes through centuries. And I do believe that next to the human voice, it is one of the oldest instruments, um, starting in sort of courts and for kings, and then of course in churches where most people recognize it, and then of many times in people's homes, sort of as a means for entertainment and gatherings and home organists that happened hundreds of years ago.
Are there different sizes of organs?
They're all very different. Some have one keyboard all the ways up to, I believe the largest has six or seven, and they vary differently everywhere you go. And it's one of the instruments, I believe, that you really have to get to know before you really can perform a full length program, because you have to set stops and prepare it for the actual performance and the recital. And so it is truly the most complex instrument around still today, and they vastly differ from the size. I think the one here at the chapel has nearly 5,000 plus pipes. Some go as low as a few hundred, and then there are of course digital replications and a variety of in between. So all sizes and shapes and sonorities.
My first exposure to organ music was at Radio City Music Hall. I was born in the city and
Yeah.
raised, and they showed movies, and the Rockettes danced, and the organist played between the movie showing. You could stay for two if you wanted to in those days. But I was
Yeah.
always really overwhelmed how, maybe it was Mike, but how fulsome the sound was.
The organ at Radio City Music Hall is a theater organ, I believe, built by Wurlitzer, and so that's an entirely different style of music and playing as opposed to a church instrument that is a bit more in the classical realm. You can still do either on a theater organ can play classical music fairly well, and you can still do theater stuff, I think, easier on a classical organ than vice versa. But yes, I know that organ. And I've been there and I've played it just for a brief time. I've not performed on it, but I certainly know it. And yeah, that's the exciting part. You really have to build organs for the rooms. They're part of the environment and they're part of the space and the atmosphere, and it's meant to be sort of seen, heard, and felt in regards to the sounds in the
Talk to
space.
me a little bit about felt.
Yeah, when I say felt, when you have the 32-foot pipes rumbling, it really it's more rather than the audible and the sound quality, it's more about feeling it in the room. So you can actually feel the vibrations on the walls, and you can feel the sort of the sense of the room speaking to you. So. Referencing New York City, I mean, like at St. Patrick's Cathedral or St. Bartholomew's or St. John the Divine, when you have pipes larger than 64 feet, um, you really feel it in the space. And so as you're sitting in a pew or in a chair, you really feel the room sort of almost speaking to you as you do just listening. And so the instrument sort of engulfs you with not just sound, but also the presence of a vibration in the space. That's why organ music really is really best uh, heard in the particular space. I know we've gotten used to so much digital creations these last few years, but really the pipe organ should, more than many instruments, should really be heard live and again experienced in that sense.
When I observe an organist, if they're visible, it's just so athletic. You
Yeah.
know, how how did you ever get drawn into starting and taking up that challenging instrument?
Yeah, it was it kind of found me, if you will. I, was a pianist. I started piano at age 4 and really enjoyed that. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and was playing piano from a young age. And then I just wanted to learn the basics of the organ to assist at church services and make a little bit of extra money while I was in junior high and high school. And it just sort of called and resonated to me. And I heard Johann Sebastian Bach, the greatest, I think, composer ever, and played on an organ that he would have heard in his native Germany, and it just sort of engulfed me. And it was like the divine speaking and saying, "This is what you're meant to do for the rest of your life." And so I dedicated my life to it and wanted to master the instrument and its styles of repertoire. We have more music for the organ really than any other instrument, perhaps aside from the human voice. So, and each sort of century, particularly, was a different approach to playing and writing. And so, what was happening in France and what was happening in Germany in the 1600s and 1700s was very different than perhaps what was happening in Spain in organ writing and sort of organ building. And so, it's a very, very complex instrument, and it's a joy to constantly learn and constantly experience the variety that it provides.
What would you say that you need to have by way of gift or talent to see you through to becoming a significant player of the organ?
I believe probably a strong piano background is important. Again, like I said, they're different classifications of instruments, but I still believe having a strong sort of piano, strong fingers is a good starting point. But I just think a really understanding and excitement for it. It sadly is not as popular as it was, but I believe it's starting to make a turn a bit and start to gain some excitement again. And my goal is just to share it with the masses, where they can hear it and experience it in their churches and concert halls and university settings, where I'm fortunate to play. And then, of course, every week, wonderfully here at the Royal Ponciana Chapel in Palm Beach. And so I want to encourage people to take it up and to try it, because it really is unbelievably thrilling. It's just having means, access to churches for practicing, and possibly buying one's own instrument, which tends to be expensive. But I think the result is exciting, and there's certainly a need and a want for good organists.
So you went to a couple of music schools, some of which you have degrees from and some for additional training. Did they
Yeah.
specialize in some aspect of organ teaching or playing?
Correct. Yeah, I went to all of my music degrees. All of my degrees were in organ playing and performance, and it allowed me to sort of hone my craft. Started in Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, and then did a year at the Juilliard School in New York City, and then transferred to Peabody Conservatory at Johns Hopkins for my graduate degree, my master's, and then I did my postgraduate degree there as well, and decided to also go over to France to study a bit in Toulouse to play those types of organs. And so, yes, everything is sort of, there were specific teachers at each university I wanted to work with, and was fortunate to be able to go to each place and work with particular people who I wanted to.
So now that you've had the education and the dedication you've put into it, have you ever thought about composing?
Yes, I mean, I write little things for church, and that type of thing. But my sort of goal as a performer is to perform the great works of sort of the established composers and whatnot. I compose for a need. It's not necessarily as much as my gift. I do some arranging for brass and certain orchestral instruments, but the performance aspect is sort of more of my strength, and so I'm happy to contribute as needed, but it's not something that is at the top of my priority list and talent stack in that sense.
Do you feel you have to educate your audience before they hear you play?
No, definitely. I think it's essential. I mean, I do it even more so now, especially with, sadly, the classical culture not being as sort of fine tuned into what's happening. And so I leave this week to play in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'll speak for 5 or 10 minutes beforehand about the music that I'm going to play, so there's some sort of sense of understanding. Sometimes I write program notes to explain the music as people are listening. But yes, I think sadly, some places aren't receiving quite as much music education, and so I feel like it's my duty to help and assist when I perform, to educate all ages.
Well, the fact that the pipe music viscerally is experienced, and as we go into the different senses, that's a whole new world to discuss with the psychologists or whoever
Yeah.
um, uh, can do that. I, if you were going to, I have grandchildren, and if I said I'm going to take them to an organ recital, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to tell them what to listen for or like, or how does one introduce younger people, even in their 20s or 30s, to a first or second time experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it comes down to a lot as well with the performer and of the performer to again, like we were just talking about, educating the audience. So I think it's really exciting to have sort of the youth and have their eyes open and say, "Well, I never thought the organ could do that," or "I never expected to." Um, enjoy it this much. And I just really feel like it called me. I feel like it can call other people if they just experience it. And so I think it's people's duty to and hope that people will I don't want to say force, but really strongly encourage people in their teens and 20s to experience cultural events that really allow the younger generation to enjoy and perhaps grasp these things that might, you can't really get on a phone or on a computer or through social media. And so I just think and I stress everywhere I play that, and I always thank the audience that, for being there, especially this time post COVID, where people have gotten very comfortable at home on their computer and on their phone, listening to videos, where being present in the space is just so important. So if anything, I just encourage people to go to live, not just organ, but live music events, classical, jazz, or whatever, to again experience it in the present.
And you did some work with Dick Hyman. How did that
I
come about?
Yeah, he's one of my idols. I reached out to him years ago. I was living in Tampa, Florida at the time, and he was in Venice, and I drove down and really wanted to meet him and met with him and spent the day talking about music and playing. And I have a little bit of a jazz background, and so I was very fascinated with particularly a lot of ragtime, and I still to this day do a lot of ragtime on the organ, and sort of taking that style of music and highlighting it, for sort of a church audience or an organ audience, to showcase that the organ can really do everything. And so yeah, Dick Hyman was always one of my sort of mentors and somebody I had just admired since I was a preteen and a teen studying piano, in Pittsburgh, and then moving to New York, and heard the name everywhere. And so when I knew he was close by in Florida, I just picked up the phone, and we developed a very long friendship. And I believe he's 98 years old, and just still going strong. And so just a wonderful human being and inspiration.
There's so much difference in the composer's style. How
Mhm.
would you, if you were leading a class separate from the notes, what would you alert people to experience? I mean, there's a way you experience things, way to think about it, but starting with the experience, what to listen for.
I think the most important thing musically, really to listen for, is rhythm. Rhythm is sort of essential, and it gives that sort of foundation where you can, tap your foot and really feel everything. Rhythm is sort of the backbone of music. I always tell people that I could sing you "Happy Birthday" with all of the correct notes, but in totally different rhythms, and you would have no idea that I'm, trying
Playing a
to.
tune.
Right, exactly. But I could clap you "Happy Birthday," the rhythm, without any pitch, and you'll certainly know right away that it's "Happy Birthday." And again, I think it's essential that rhythm be emphasized and understood, for all styles of music, particularly classical and jazz, and that really is sort of the start. And then, of course, you can get into pitch and harmony and all of those things. But I think rhythm is key.
If things are repeated often in a piece, can that mesmerize you? Can that hypnotize you? I'm thinking drums in this particular case, but let's
Yeah.
talk about it generally in in music. Can it take you out of yourself, so to speak?
I definitely think so. I mean, I think music and sort of again, playing certain music, particularly organ in certain ambience and certain spaces, can really get you mesmerized. Like playing Bach in the churches, or Vidor and Vierne composers in Paris. Where they were actually, like in Notre Dame or in places like that, where the music was actually written. It really can be otherworldly and get you mesmerized and an outer body experience. So I think certainly with I think good music, I always jokingly say there are really only two types of music, good and bad, and I just think that hopefully all good music can do that to people.
So it can take you to a spiritual space, an inner experience as well.
Oh, very much so. I mean, it certainly does to me. I mean, that's why I was definitely called to do this. I did not choose it, and so everything that I play on the organ and music in general is um, backed in a sort of a spiritual sense and God, given and divinely inspired.
With your level of proficiency and drive, what do you see yourself learning in the next 5, 10 years?
My goal is to continue to make beautiful music here at this wonderful chapel, and then continue to travel the world in different churches, concert halls, university settings, and just expose this instrument to as many people as possible. Because I think once people hear it, and I've been blessed to have people tell me that I've really awakened a fire in their passion for wanting to learn more and to grow in this instrument. And so that my goal is just to consistently spread this amazing music across the world. I mean, with the organ, you have to go to particular places. It's not like I can carry it. So every place is different and a different experience. And so I just want to share the best music for each particular audience everywhere I go. And really that's my lifelong goal, to get as many people exposed to the beauty and majesty of the pipe organ as possible.
Could you say a word or two about the music of the classical composers who composed for an organ?
Again, it all comes back to Johann Sebastian Bach. From his time of 1685 to 1750, he wrote the biggest and the best, I think, output for the classical organ. But you have Dietrich Buxtehude in Germany prior to him, and Georg Friedrich Handel. And then in France, you have Louis Vierne and Charles Marie Widor, who was at Notre Dame and Saint Sulpice. And you just have all these amazing pieces and composers and writers that just we have, just centuries of music. And again, we go back to dance forms of the Renaissance, where the organ music was played to accompany the dancing, and therefore inspiring sort of that style of playing and musical understanding. And so it's just the possibilities are endless. And again, the organ can really do anything and really play all styles. But I think the classical repertoire that it was written for is where it really shines the best. And I understand, sadly, that so many people have not had the best experience of hearing good organ playing or whatnot. But hearing it in a concert setting or a very strong church organist can I really I think can be eye-opening and sort of mesmerizing to the listener when experienced, well played, and proper music in this space.
In New York, which was your use? Well, maybe that's, I don't want to ask about, but what I was going to ask was which of the churches have the best space or organ to hear this at its very best level?
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. I mean, St. Patrick's Cathedral is wonderful because the organ engulfs you. I was fortunate to work at St. Ignatius Loyola on Park Avenue and 83rd, and that has an amazing Mander organ on the back wall that is just glorious. There are so many, and since I've last been there, some even more, or since I've last lived there, there's even some more and newer instruments in there. So New York is filled with exceptional instruments. Riverside Church, so many great
Not
organs
far
there.
where you are. So thank
Yeah.
you very much, Adam. We've learned a lot of from Adam, and namely to think of the organ pipes or the voice, and to emphasize, listen for the rhythm. And it's an engulfing experience because it's, besides auditory, it's physiological, and it's important to sit in the center of wherever you are, the church or the recital hall, and that that he has a spiritual calling to do well, to dedicate his life to that. And one of the great things of life is to have a calling and to put the time in. So I thank Adam for being part of this and introducing the organ to a wider audience and to pointing out how satisfying it can be really good at something and share it with the rest of us humans. So thank you, everybody. Please do something nice for someone you know and someone you don't know every day of this coming week, and I'll see you next time. Be well, be happy, be safe, be original minded. Thank you.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonsthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.